So again, welcome back to your beautiful, quick tutorial on how to create journeys using analog version of BLUErabbit. So um, on my last intervention, I told you that what I wanted you to do is to basically use these tools to start designing the activities based on the assumption that you're going to design a player journey for a learning environment where the problem is the learners are not engaged. Okay, that's the assumption. Our tools are the quest, which is where the players upload stuff, the challenge, where the players are tested over knowledge, not over learning. Very important difference. Achievement, which is thing like the magic words, or you can simply identify an achievement as a tool to award points to the players when you cannot measure that progress inside the system. Okay, uh, so before we get, because again, this in this very moment, I'm not expecting that you design all the things of the activity. I want to share a couple of concepts before we get our hands dirty. We still have 4 more interventions before we get to the conclusion of what we're going to be building. And in those next 4 sessions, we are actually, I really want you to write down stuff and avoid using the whiteboard in Remo. Last time we had this workshop, we find that using the whiteboard was another learning curve. It's kind of like new technology over other technology. So just do it on piece of paper. You can take a picture, share the picture with your table mates, and that way you can just discuss over what you're actually writing on paper. 95% of the work that you do for building player journey will not necessarily be on the platform. It will be on your head, on paper, or maybe on a Word document. It's in our case, almost all the content is on a very long list of emails and a very complex and long Excel file that I will show you later on. But right now, I want you to get to know a little bit of the little feedback loop that we try to ensure everything we do in BLUErabbit has this thing somehow. And by always keeping this loop in the back of your head, you will always follow it, and you will ensure that the players are engaged into an activity. Um, the hard part of an engagement loop is not only that you have to do it several times, is to ensure that doing the same thing many times represent different value for the user. Um, Real quickly, what we do in BLUErabbit, the first thing that we always start with is with the prompt part. And that's why when you log into BLUErabbit, you see a list of things that you can do, and that's the system offering something that you can actually do. There may be some other applications where you can start, for instance, maybe with a consequence. If you want to start a game with the story, you can say that the consequence, so you can start with a consequence of something happening to the player, which is he starts up like showing being almost dead or something like that. I don't know. You show what happened to a player, and then that player will have to go through their own journey. Um, so there, in the end, you will always end up following uh, the entire loop over and over and over again. And it's pretty simple once you get started. So from that toolbox that I gave you, and again, thinking that you have a problem, you want people to learn something, and the problem is that the players are not engaged with that content. I want you to start prompting the player to do something. And that has to be done with one of those tools. So, okay, ask the player to prove their knowledge of something, or ask the players to scan a code, ask the players to input a magic word, ask the players to upload content on the platform, take a picture of themselves, something. At the very beginning, your first activity not necessarily is for them to progress in terms of the learning material. It may be to help them get through the platform a little bit, to get used to this loop and to these sets of activities. So first of all, you ask the players to do that, something excessively simple that's almost irrelevant. We always assign some task that will grant you 100 points, and 100 points is 1/10 of what people need to level up to level 2. So it's not that relevant. It's just kind of like, oh, I did this. Now I got some points. I know that I can keep doing this for the rest of the event and level up. So your first step is to prompt them into something. And in the back of this image, you can see that there is a little rabbit right there. It's our logo. It's Cooper there. Okay. So right in the back of that image, if that's the image, then the system is doing it. If it's a player, then the player has to do it. Okay. So, or it happens to the player. So you prompt the people, someone to do something, and then the players have to do this action. Once they do it, the system has to process the information. I mean, I'm talking rocket science here, right? It's super hard to understand. However, this is something that I've seen many times not to be taken into account. Whatever the player did on the system and whatever the system processed from that action has to lead in two things. So two things need to happen. One is the consequence, which is what I did affected the player. So consequence goes related to the player. And then there has to be a change. And that the change is what happens to the system because of the actions of the player. So the example I use is there's a tree with apples, and the tree has 20 apples. When a player goes, I mean, the system tells the player, go and grab an apple. Okay, so he goes and grabs an apple. Once he grabs the apple, two things happen. The consequence is that the player now has one apple. He had 0 before, now he has 1. And the change to the system is that the tree now has only 19 apples. Whether something else happens and you want to overcomplicate this thing, it's not relevant at the moment. Don't make it any harder than it is. But what would happen if other players come is that if there's 50 players, only 19 would get an apple. Am I right? So that's why it's important. And the next part, which makes everything make the entire thing actually make sense, is the feedback. So you tell the player, dude, this is what happened. The entire tree only has 19 apples. You have 1, and you cannot take another one until you finish the first one. Something like that. So this is the loop we always follow. So, okay, you're going to ask them to do a quest, upload something. The system has to process it. So the player uploads the content, then the system processes it. Then they get the points. The system now has a player who has leveled up a little bit more, and then there's more access to items in the item shop. Then there's people who could buy and get some stuff from there. The feedback is now this person has more points. You can see an animation when you level up, and another player when they go to the item shop, then there's no more items if they have already bought it. So then you prompt the next action, and then you keep doing that. The thing is that not all players should be able to earn rewards for all the actions, but they should all earn resources. It's two separate things. So I have these concepts in my head that when you provide a player with experience points and with coins and with energy points or whatever you want to put them, those are resources for the player to actually experience the adventure. And what they do with those points, those are rewards. I'm going to step down now. Please feel free to discuss a little bit more about this. Choose your tools wisely and keep moving forward. See you guys.